And we are on. Yvonne, thank you for joining us. Mama will join us later in a few minutes. I think she's trying to log in to moderate. And her job is really to see what questions we're getting and be able to pose it to us. How are you doing?
I'm great. A little busy.
Yeah.
Given everything going on.
So you are at State Street right now.
I am. I'm in the office. There's about 3 of us here.
So everybody got your bio. Yvonne Garcia is the Chief of Staff of State Street. And so you have her bio. I don't need to repeat anything. Can you add a couple things? And then I want to talk about what you're currently doing at State Street.
Sure. So I'm the CEO's Chief of Staff. I also am the head of Global Internal Communications, which is why it's been so busy lately. As you can imagine, communications during a crisis plays a big role. And it's a way to make sure that our 40,000 employees feel connected, informed, engaged. So that's really been my primary focus right now is working really hard to make sure that all of our employees across the world, across the globe, are informed with how this crisis is evolving and the impact it's having on our operations, on the financial market. And that's really what we've been up to here lately.
So normally your building has how many people, just so we can paint a picture?
And globally, we're 40,000 employees.
But the building that you sit at?
In the thousands.
Okay, and how many people are in the building?
Another organization as well. So we probably have about, the entire building, maybe 20 people. In our organization, about probably 5.
Oh, wow, that's incredible. So how has this impacted the way that you lead? Because normally you are in front of people, you're talking to people. This has shifted for you. What does that look like?
It's really drawn out a lot of innovation and creativity from the team, looking for ways to communicate effectively without always having an audience in front of you. We also have, it's really also allowed me to, I've always had a pretty large cultural mindset, but it's really forced me to think about the different situations in different countries. So we have a broad group of employees in India, many 85, 90% of which are working from home right now, where connectivity is different, bandwidth is different. So being culturally sensitive to not only how we communicate, but the different tools that we're using to make sure that they feel included. It's been challenging in a good way. My leadership style is one that thrives in crises. I've led through a different type of crisis, mm-hmm. And I've come to realize that, as you know, I've come to realize that I think this kind of excites me in a way because I think I'm a problem solver at heart, and when you're leading through a crisis, it's really about finding different ways of getting things done.
Now, I feel like, for me at least, I have changed the way I do things. Really changed the way I do things. Things for you, how have they changed? For you personally, not the organization, you personally.
I'm being more nimble. So in the past, I would want to make sure that I have all my facts and data before I make decisions or before I call the shots on something. And now I'm just going with good enough. And that's because we don't have the luxury of time in this situation. And that's really teaching me to have confidence in any data that I have and in my experience in leading. So I would say that I'm probably acting a little bit faster without all of the data, but this is where experience comes in and just good judgment.
Yeah, of course. It changes. The more experience you have, the more you know how to manage the scenarios that are coming across.
Yeah, I think another way it's changed me too is that I'm being more, before, I've always been big on knowing your audience and segmenting your audience as it relates to the different value propositions and messages that you give them. But in this scenario, I've been extra sensitive to to who I'm speaking to, and understanding that in this crisis, for example, our teammates in China experienced it first. So the message today that I would send to the employees in North America would be very different. Our team in China, they're making their way back to the office. Life is, a little bit more normal than what we're experiencing here in North America. So I've been more aware of just not assuming that one message resonates. So we've had very targeted vehicles that we're using to get messages out to different parts of the world that are going through different parts of this crisis.
Now, how are you working with people that are working from home?
We're trying a lot of different type of virtual engagements. So we will send targeted videos. Of course, there's always email, but we are leveraging different tools and IT platforms to allow us to connect. Now, the videos are great because they help, they help people feel connected.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, depending where you are and what part of the world you are in, and because of the bandwidth being so stretched through all our network providers, you have to become a little bit creative and not assume that a WebEx or a video will work. So just trying multiple platforms. When we put a communications plan together for a key message, we try to get the message out through multiple platforms so that it accommodates the bandwidth arrangements that everyone has across the globe.
Of course, that makes a lot of sense. Evelyn Brito, who is online right now, she wants to know how you are balancing chaos and family.
Well, balance. Luckily online classes have started, so that's keeping the kids occupied. I do, one thing that's kind of benefiting us, which is sad that it's happening, but all of the events after work are on hold. So I really get to actually go home after work. But in general, balance for me has always been I'm very intentional. I am very strict about how I manage my time. There's not a minute on my calendar that does not go towards something. And that includes towards me. On weekends, I really try to take time for myself to make sure that I remain sane, and for the kids. So you make it work, and you'll find the right balance. But I'm really passionate about what I'm doing right now, so it's easier to justify and not feel that that there's a part of your life that you're missing out on. And then I remind myself that hopefully I'm serving as a role model for my kids, and that they're watching me work through a crisis. My son told me the other day, you're the only mom that's not staying home. Everyone's really surprised that you're still going to work. And, hopefully they'll understand and respect me as a leader. And when they get older, they'll hopefully, just lead.
When you say that, I was struck with when we interviewed you for the Roar book, Roar If You Have To. One of the things that you talk about in the book is biting more than you can chew. And in particular, you talked about when you were offered an opportunity to go to China, and I believe your son Max was still, I was going to say a toddler, but yes, one, and you had to, can you talk a lot about that?
Sure. That was what I've always classified that as my biggest personal sacrifice, but my biggest professional accomplishment. And I received a call on a Thursday night offering a 2-year assignment in China, coming back and forth once a month. And the family couldn't go with me. And I must admit, a lot of people say, oh, that must have been a tough decision. It wasn't for me. I was all in. I've always dreamt of working in another country. And of course, China, what a great country to get corporate experience in. And I also knew that, I had a very supportive husband that was, that I always say, when you find a partner, find someone who wants you to succeed as bad as you do. And then my son was 1 and Izzy was 5. And I'll say it was hard because I was away from the kids so much. But it has served as such a great life lesson for them, and a leadership lesson. I also learned a lot about different cultures and working with people from different parts of the world. And what I learned is, as complicated as we try to make it, is that it's actually quite simple and we're all very similar. We may speak different languages, make decisions in different ways, hand business cards out differently, but at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. We want to do right by the organization. We want to be able to provide for our family. We want to be acknowledged for the work that we do. So I actually made some great friends, and more importantly, I was able to just really learn a lot. I became a Six Sigma Black Belt as a result because the project was so large. And I learned how to lead and work in a different environment, which has benefited me quite a bit as I've taken on larger global roles throughout my career.
So two things. I'll start with the second one because it's a perfect combination to what you're talking about. Talk about Six Sigma. What does that mean? Because I remember somebody that you and I were connected to, and they thought it was was it karate that they thought it?
Karate certification.
Yeah.
So it's a statistical methodology that's used. It leverages statistics to make business decisions. It started out mostly in engineers. So GE started it, it wasn't GE that started, but GE was a big adapter of it. Motorola, I believe. And essentially, any business decision that's made. So when you think about, actually, when you go to McDonald's and you see how they have that kind of assembly line, and all of a sudden your soda comes flying, that's all Six Sigma. Disney, for example, uses it in their parks. When everyone's always so amazed about how organized Disney is and how they can figure things out and the processes that have in place. That's all Six Sigma. Coca-Cola is a big Six Sigma user. So you can use it from a marketing perspective. I've used it to select different demographics that I'd like to implement a campaign in, to making really hard decisions, keeping the key factors to success in mind. So there's so many ways to use Six Sigma, but it's been a great tool, and it really gives you a very strong approach to solving for some complex business problems.
Super. I'm just managing the questions. You were talking about balancing your work life, your business, particularly now, and how you take time out for yourself. What does taking out time for yourself look like?
Well, I like to go for runs. I think not only because it's good from a health perspective, but it also allows you to clear your mind. And then I love a good day in the spa. So even though sometimes I have one cucumber in my eye and the other one open looking at messages, I still make a point to try to get to the spa as much as I can. I go for walks. Now I have a puppy, and I take him for walks once in a while. So it's I also love hosting, which unfortunately right now we can't do.
Mm-hmm.
Killing me, but it's hosting and having friends over always is just a great way for me to enjoy myself and the people that I care about. So.
Now, recently your daughter was at Simmons College, yes? And she's
Yes.
back home, obviously, as all our kids are. How does that feel?
Well, it's fine. She did not dorm there, so it wasn't much of a
okay.
Other than not being as busy. So in a way, this crisis has really helped us. It's probably helped us not take things for granted. And I must admit, I'm probably not the only family that feels this way. We haven't had, a home-cooked meal with all four of us sitting around the table in a while. So it's been really nice to have just to almost have forced time together. I know at one point, there are points throughout the day that it probably drives people crazy, and you're trying to work from home and while the kids are in the back. But I will say that I think it's taught us not to take things for granted, and hopefully a reminder to what really matters in life.
I think so too. For me, I love having my boys home. Of course, they're teenagers. One is going to be 19, one is 16, and I love having them home. And yes, the first few days were a little challenging because they were they were here all the time and they were so noisy, and I was so used to having it quiet. So that has changed for me. But one thing that I've noted in myself is that at night I put my phone on do not disturb because I know they're home. So I don't have to worry that I need to pick them up or that I need to be concerned about where they're at. Would you agree with that?
Yes, we have global operations, so I can't put my phone.
Of course you can.
Unfortunately, most of our operational challenges happen in the middle of the night. But there is a peace of mind knowing that they're home and protected, and it's just a matter of also when they're not doing schoolwork is how to keep them engaged. But yeah, I love having the kids home, and it's really nice to go home to them and not have to be out every night at an event. So I must admit, as much as my heart breaks for a lot of these nonprofits that unfortunately have had to postpone their events, etc., it is nice to be home more.
And now, Omama is, let me just make sure that she's set. I've had a problem making sure that she could, there she is. She was there all the time, but for some reason couldn't connect with us. So I was managing the questions. Welcome, Omama, glad you're here. It is a little challenging to manage talking with Yvonne and also looking at who is asking questions. So yay for Omama being here.
So hi, this is so great so far. I actually still cannot see the questions. I'm as a participant, so I can't see any of the questions at the moment. I don't know how to make the switch.
Oh man, okay, so I will manage the questions.
I'm so sorry. I'm like waiting. I'm like, I can't see anything, so I apologize. I don't know how to make that switch.
Okay, so I will ask one of the questions then. What do you recommend women in leadership do to support other women that are worried about losing their jobs / positions? Are there podcasts, organization, online resources? What do you recommend?
Of women that are worried about, now is the time to leverage the network. Hopefully, everyone has worked on building a network, and I'm not familiar with any podcasts, but I would say just making sure that that they stay in touch and continue to market themselves. I will say that one thing that I've noticed is a lot of my mentees, that are actually really bright, are leveraging this downtime to get in front of you, even if it's virtually. Once things pick up and we hopefully go back to normal, and hopefully this is not our new normal, things will get really busy. But right now you have some top executives that are working they're working hard in terms of managing through the crisis, but their calendars in terms of travel and, has lightened up a bit. So I would say take advantage of that time. I mean, I for one, am one person that I find myself, having more virtual coffees with my mentees because I'm not on the road as much. I can't be on the road, even if I wanted to. So I would say, as busy as it is when you're managing through a crisis, a lot of these top executives do have a little bit more time because they can't travel. So
that's a great idea. I have to make a list of who I need to connect to during this time. I wanted to.
The other thing on that, that I think is important too is watching people reinvent themselves during a crisis. So no matter what they've done, finding an angle where you can use your expertise to take advantage of times like this. In every crisis there's opportunities. So anything from this crisis will probably dramatically change what the workforce of the future will be like. So a lot of people are working from home. A lot of companies are collecting data points on what function of their business actually did really well working from home, which ones didn't. And as a result, I can envision a lot of organizations changing their workforce model. So making yourself relevant to the changes that will come from this. will be great, whether you're in marketing or whether you run a business or you're in sales. Really, any function that you represent, there's an angle to what the future will look like and how we will do things differently.
No,
Getting ahead would be great.
say that last part.
Getting ahead of that would be great.
No, I think that's brilliant, because you do have to either from switching careers, or from going, for myself, being an entrepreneur, going corporate, or going corporate and becoming an entrepreneur, or from one role to another. This is a great opportunity to look at who you want to be. And maybe there's some skill sets that you don't have that you can take some classes, some online classes. You can, as you said, connect with other leaders that are doing what you want to do. Right? Omama, do you have anything for that? Because I know Omama is also transitioning.
Sorry. So what everyone's saying is absolutely phenomenal, and it's interesting how, like, I just made a video yesterday about, you know, making the pivot, and people need to make a pivot, because I mean, it's unfortunate that we have the coronavirus, but people need to make a pivot in order to blossom. And it's kind of like a caterpillar to a butterfly. The caterpillar only has that short life expectancy before it blossoms into something else. So this is actually a great time to reinvent the wheel, and I totally agree with everything that's being said at the moment.
Super. I want to talk about you personally, Yvonne, because you have, so let me preface it by saying that I put a post about Yvonne when I was with Color Magazine. And it was about, we were doing an interview with Yvonne. And that post, that singular post, got 60,000 views on it. It was the highest post we've ever had. And I think in the history of color, still, that's probably the highest post. You have a huge fan base. What do you think about that?
I actually don't think of it that way. And so I don't even know how many followers I have. And quite frankly, you know, I always say there's a lot of things I can improve on, but I am probably most proud of that is that I don't see my life in terms of how many followers do I have or how many likes I get. I kind of just go out there and do my thing. And I try to be the best person I can be and help others. Sometimes I'm not, sometimes not, you know, we all have flaws, but it's just, I kind of just go out there and do what I do without really doing it to gain attention. You know, when I started volunteering at Alpha, for example, the nonprofit that I led for a long time, I started out in the Boston chapter, and I was 23 years old or something like that. I was really, really young. And I started out by making name tags, and I would stay up till 2 a.m. writing out name tags for all these events that we were having, and we'd have like over 200 people. And I gave that organization my all from a very young age, and I never really thought about kind of the perks I would get as a result. You know, fast forward after 20 years of volunteering, you know, I became the national chairwoman, and with that comes a platform and a certain stage, and you get visibility. And then I saw a lot of people kind of join for that, where for me it felt like, oh my God, I've been doing this for 20 years, and I started out literally writing names on name tags, and I never really thought about it. I just really enjoyed it, and I felt that even though my job was small, it was still contributing to the success of the event and of the organization. So my point is, you know, when you lead, when you're authentic and genuine, and you do what you do with, you know, with passion and you have purpose, the metrics that you put on what success looks like are less about the followers and the likes, and it's more about the impact that you're having on individual lives and on the community.
I agree with you. However, there's still people that really look up to you. And there's still, and I know that you talk about authenticity and being genuine, and you are, because I've seen you I see how hard you work. I was part of the board or the advisory board for Alpha when you were there. So I could see the influence that you had. And that type of influence still carries now, and even with your role now, which is a very senior role at State Street, there's so many people that look up to Yvonne Garcia. That's the fact. And I know that you use it to leverage for a lot of great things, like Milagros para Niños, which is an organization that you were part of the founding of, or what you were one of the founders, correct?
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. We do leverage the network to do great things. Milagros para Niños is a great example. Alberto Vasallo and I founded it, over 10 years ago, and we never envisioned that it would turn into what it is today. We've raised over 10 million for Hispanic Latino kids that can't afford medical care. We have a great council, many which have, after we became the co-chairs, have become, we're part of the founding circle, and it really, it's allowed us to fundraise. And so I guess there is, leveraging your network to do great things is something that I'm a big fan of.
Well, you were part of Alpha that grew exponentially when you were president, correct? It grew from, I know it was at 1900 the last time I checked, which is, I know has far outgrown that number. It's currently now at what, 20,000, the whole Alpha?
No, it's actually about 100,000 now.
Oh, my goodness.
And when I left, we were about 80,000 or 90,000.
So that's huge. But so those two organizations where you went in because you were driven by your heart, right? You're driven by your heart. You put in a lot of effort because you were not getting paid for any of these things. But yeah, you honestly acted as though you were getting paid $1 million to drive these organizations. Honestly, I was impressed. I remember being at a board meeting with you, and you took everybody to task. And I thought, wow, this is what you would expect a CEO running an organization to do. And that's how you implemented change all throughout this nonprofit that was something that you volunteered for.
Yep.
Yeah. So, okay.
I've been very good also surrounding myself with people that are very capable and that have different strengths that I don't. So diversity at its best, even though we were all predominantly Latino, we made sure that I always made sure that I surrounded myself by people that would fill gaps, perceived gaps that I felt, were needed to be successful. So.
Now, so you have the nonprofits that you were part of, that you were running or part of driving, but where you were not, I don't want to say strategic, but I want to say you were strategic, but you were driven by your heart and your authenticity. You're driven by being genuine. How is your professional life driven? Are you more?
I love what I do. Working for a global CEO, watching him navigate during a crisis, and before this, during turbulent markets, has just been such a great experience. I've always been very transparent that I'd like to be a CEO one day. And what a great internship into seeing how a CEO leads during these times. What I love most about our CEO is just watching how focused and what a long-term mindset he has, and nothing really phases him. He stays very, he's very steady and just focused on where we need to go as an organization. Always reminds us of our purpose and why we do what we do, and how we're stronger together, and helps us navigate through a lot of things. So I love this role. And then about 6 months after I became the chief of staff, I was given the head of internal communications role, which has been, another area where it's just really opened my eyes to be very intentional in everything how I think about things, how I say things, and how certain messages are really enablers to change culture, behaviors, results. And so it's just been such a great, I get challenged every day. Our CEO is a brilliant man and challenges us every day to think differently, to be innovative, creatively, and intentional, and to always lead back to our purpose. So I will say that it is by far one of my best experiences throughout my career.
So how are you going to segue this into what you do next?
Yeah, it's a great question. I've been doing a lot of thinking about that, and I need to think about how I will use this role to pivot into a bigger role where I have had the privilege of leading global teams. So I believe that the next role would be leading a business. So
I totally see that. I've always seen it. Mama, do you want to add anything before I go on?
You're a rock star. It's like this is the message that I'm hearing, and it's funny because I was talking to Josefina the other day, and we were just talking about doing different things, and yeah, sometimes like doing all those volunteer work pays off, and I just love your humbleness of you're just kind of like, I'm just gonna keep doing it, but yeah, just everything, just keep rocking. Like you rock.
the advice that I would also give those that are not involved in nonprofits is, there will be a point in your career where you're going to be ready to serve on a corporate board maybe, or do something differently. But the one benefit that I did receive from volunteering in these nonprofits, especially when I was younger in my career, is that it's a safe space to practice different skill sets that you may not have the opportunity to do so at work. So anything from fundraising to public speaking, marketing. I saw a lot of people come in and out of our board that said, I really wish, I think I kind of want to go into business development, but I'm not sure, and I'm not ready to take that chance to do it at work. So they would come to Alpha, and they would run our fundraising department, which is corporate development essentially. And they would learn how to sell and learn how to pitch and learn how to create pitch. And, and then they would go back to their organizations and say, hey, now I'm ready to try this now. So I would encourage people to volunteer, use it as a training ground, use it as a space, a safe space to practice or to hone in on skills that perhaps you do not have the opportunity to do so, at work. I remember for me, it was public speaking. I remember the first time I stood up in front of an audience of 100 people, I thought I was going to pass out. Now, at the galas, I'll walk in front of 5,000 people, and it's like a walk in the park. But this is 20 years later, of course. Yeah. But I will say that if it wasn't for the opportunity that I had in the nonprofit, I would have never gotten to that point.
But what was it? Was it somebody that encouraged you to be part of a nonprofit, or was that driven by you solely?
No, I was new to Boston in particular. This is where I started my Alpha career, as I call it. And I had Renee Harking, Eduardo Tolong, key leaders in our community. Well, Eduardo moved to Chicago, but Renee Harking's still here. And they told me about, I was a little bit lost, and they said, hey, there's this great nonprofit. They have Latino professionals just like us. It's a great convening spot. And I remember Carol Fulp said, I worked at John Hancock back then, and she said, hey, I have 2 tickets to this great event, this organization where I think you'll enjoy. And between those 3 people, little by little, they got me involved. And fast forward, I eventually became the national chairman of the organization. But it was really people going out their way to look out for me and to say, hey, you look like someone that would enjoy this and benefit from it, and and open the doors.
Now, so when people see you, when people, I do remember when you were running Alpha, and I remember you being pregnant with Max when you were running Alpha. you are always working, you are always poised, you always had it together. Behind the scenes, what did you have to, what were some of your personal challenges to get everybody to see that poised Yvonne?
Well, it's interesting because a lot of people think I'm an extrovert and I'll go, I'll get on stage in front of 5,000 people and talk like very comfortably. But sometimes when I walk into a room full of people at a networking event, I need to remind myself to smile and just to relax and talk to people. I can be a little shy, and everyone who knows me will always laugh at that. But I actually am a little bit shy when it comes to those things. So I've done a better job of reminding myself, okay, walk in there, smile, shake hands. And that's been just being intentional in how I interact with people. But I was always very, in my last years at Alpha were very challenging. We made some decisions and some changes that brought on a lot of challenges. And, here you have someone who, to your point, volunteered for 20 years, never got a penny out of it, and in fact, contributed to it, both from my time and financial perspective. Now being tested in a very interesting way, and then looking around the room and seeing a board of directors also living their corporate or running their own business, also volunteering, and just really trying to not be angry about how what a shame that experience was, and reminding ourselves day after day, just reminding the board what our mission is. We're here to serve, which are all those, I think of all those young students out there that, that are really looking for ways to progress in their life, whether it's academically or professionally, and they're looking at us to open doors for them. So one thing that kept me focused and kept me poised when I was being challenged by my last 2 years, I would say, is just continuing to remember who we were serving and why we were there, our purpose, and reminding the board and reminding the membership. And that really carried us through, because as we went through the different challenges that we went through, at the end of the day, it almost made me fight with more, with more energy, because I knew that I was fighting for the kids that were trying to graduate, or the kids that were trying to find their first internship, that didn't have a lot of means. That, I remember one kid said he shared a bedroom with his mom and 4 brothers, and that Alpha gave him an opportunity of an internship. He just sent me a video of going to his first day on his job at JP Morgan, from living in a 1-bedroom in Washington Heights with his mom and 4 brothers. So I will say that, that's why I always am so confident in leading through any challenge, because I think of the end result and who we're helping, and I'm unstoppable.
Now, I have 2 questions for you. One that is coming from the Q&A, and that's how, when you look at a lot of places that you're actually at, and this is, I'm segueing out to what our conversation currently is, but when you're looking at the space that you're currently at, and it's really dominated by males, how are you navigating that, and how do you stand out, you personally?
I would say some of my greatest mentors have been men, and I grew up with a very strong father figure in my life. I'm very fortunate to, and I still have him. Thank God my dad is still alive, and still, someone I go to for advice all the time. I also grew up watching my mom work really hard, and very strong work ethic, and how she managed it all. And more importantly, I grew up watching my dad support her, and just be one of her biggest champions. So my expectation of men in my life, whether it's professionally and personally, is that they are there to be a partner, to support me as much as I support them. So not from a perspective, I never, it was really kind of nice and cool to see that my mom never really depended on my dad per se. She was her own woman, and she had a career, but they were a team. And I approach my relationship with men at work the same way, as we're a team. I will add as much value to you as you will add to me. You know, maybe I would add more. You know, because women tend to have multifaceted lives and are able to handle more sometimes. So I just, for me, walking into a room full of men is a little, it's disappointing. And whenever I can, I will try to influence it so that more women have a seat at the table. But I treat them as my equal and as a partner. And hope that they advocate, you know, if they're in a room when we're not, that they serve as sponsors and are able to advocate for us.
So there's some folks, me included. I remember when I used to do sales for Cargill, and I had to walk into an office where there were people that I didn't know, and that maybe my mood wasn't the best, or I just got off a flight. And there were like these little techniques that I would do in order to get into the mindset. So for example, at Cargill, I would put on a smile on my face, even if I wasn't in front of people, just so they could hear that I was smiling, or I would smile before I walk in a room. Not a fake smile, although initially it is a fake smile because you are putting it on your face. And then most recently, when having meetings, as you know, I launched Right Media a few months ago, or actually it's going to be a year in May, if you can believe that. Wow. Anyways, but going into meetings, and I actually have been doing the power pose before I go in. Are there any little tricks that you do that gets you in that mindset?
Well, I will say I just physically no. I mean, I always try to remind myself to, you know, good posture and stuff, which I'm not very good at. But I will say what I do is I prepare a lot. I probably prepare more than anyone else that enters that room. And that may be because you know, at times you hear about the confidence gap with women. Is I just feel better when I walk into any meeting, knowing that I've done my research, because I want to be able to add value. Where I see sometimes men walk in like, oh, what's this meeting about? And I'm like, oh my God, yeah, I've been doing so much research. Like, you don't even know what we're meeting about. So for me, my strategy is just, in addition to physically standing up confident, and I also position myself in a boardroom in the middle. I never just go to the outskirts. I also try to place myself in a prominent spot. Obviously, I'm not going to take the CEO seat, but I either sit to the right of him or close to him, where, you know, I see sometimes women come and they kind of take the last seat in the corner. So that's something that I'm intentional about. But really, my key is preparation.
So preparation, taking a seat in a place, more in the influence side, right?
Right.
And then lastly, you are your posture, right? So those are the three things that you kind of put together. How about, and I know we've talked about this, although right now we're working a lot virtually, so your dress doesn't really, is not as important, but I believe it still is important. What do you think about how you need to dress still in the corporate world?
You know, that's an interesting point, and I am one. We were joking. They said, "Oh, there are like 5 people here," and I came in a dress, and you know, everyone's like, "You're the best dressed executive during this crisis." And I will say that I do think that it makes a difference, and depending at what stage you are in your career. You know, I've had some of my mentees say, well, I can't afford to go out and buy this expensive suit. And the truth is, you know, it doesn't have to be expensive. I will say that dressing appropriately for work has always been important to me. So, you know, the way I dress to go when I used to go out to nightclubs, you know, is very different than the way I show up to work. I tend to be on the conservative side, so I never put on anything that's too short, too tight, or showing too much. I just don't think it's appropriate for work. I see some women do it, and like, who am I to judge? And to each their own. But I personally think that it is important for you to show up the right way. And the right way for me is more on the conservative side. I'm not here to model off, my physique. I'm here to contribute from an intellectual perspective.
I love that. I love that. Has that shifted a little bit since you're doing these virtual, you're still dressing up for the office when you're not in the office? How are you preparing for those meetings?
So I've been in the office, but I did have a few calls with Australia, and we were joking because it was close to midnight, and I must admit I had my pajama pants on with a suit jacket, and my hair and makeup were done. So and I think there's a lot of creativity going on out there right now with people working from home. But I still made sure that I had a suit jacket on and that my hair and makeup were done. But I must confess I had pajama pants on and slippers.
Well, I have to say, I called, I decided to do these webinars because I felt that there was a need to connect with other leaders, with other people that, wanted to think about their future, not necessarily just about, not that it's not important, but we are hearing so much news. And I wanted an opportunity to step away from the current news and talk about things like this that resonate for many leaders, for many of us. And I called a good friend of mine, Brenda McKenzie, who is going to be one of the webinar guests later on. She started a company called Identity Narrative. Is a brand of perfumes that are, I bought one of them. But I called her and I said, so can I just dress the way I'm dressing? And she says, absolutely not. You have to, and I actually had to step back and think about it because I have been home. I've been working from home. Of course, when I step out, I always dress out for my meetings. But doing this, I had to think about it. And I said, I'm not wearing any makeup. She said, you absolutely must at least put mascara on. So thank you, Brenda, if you're online. Thank you for that. Omama, do you want to add anything?
So I've been working from home since January 2019, and I don't dress up unless there's like a video call, but it will be like, yeah, the suit jacket and a pair of sweats, right? And I think it's interesting that we're talking about dressing up for women, and it's like with women, especially in the corporate world, and showing up, like you go on and see the TV and their discussion how public figures are dressing, but they're not discussing how the men are dressing. And I think it's important, especially for women, to show that we're intelligent, we're bright, we're doers, we're all these amazing things, and our clothing is not the subject of what the matter is. So kudos to both of you for actually just making sure that you continue to look sharp and you continue to have people look at your mind, because that's the most important thing rather than what you're currently dressed as.
Well, one of the things, what resonated for me in terms of what Yvonne said was that she dresses conservatively. However, she doesn't want how she's dressed to be a point of conversation, because what she's coming to the table is with her intellect. She just doesn't want to be. Did I mishear that?
That's right. That's right. I don't dress in a way that's going to, garner a conversation about did you see how tight her dress is or how short? It's really, I want people to say, what a great idea she had, or did you see how she was able to, get that done or make that change? I will say though, there are a lot of articles out there about women wearing heels at work, and I religiously wear my 4-inch heels. I love them. I will not give them up. And, I'm sure people will judge, and women who wear heels sometimes, I think they're beautiful, and it is something that I've always worn. And you know, if I've just learned that you can't please the world, but I'm into the business of making sure that I'm comfortable in my own skin, and I love my 4-inch heels.
No, I cannot wear 4-inch heels. I can wear maybe 2.5, 3, but I really have found a fondness for wedges lately. So I can run around and still, feel good. Yvonne, thank you so much for being part of the webinar series. Thank you for really all your input and your thoughtfulness and your engagement. Because I think one of the things that always shows up when you're in the room or when you talk is how genuine you are and how much you care for other people and how you support. Really, you support everyone, but you spend a lot of time mentoring and supporting other women. So thank you for that.
Thank you, and thanks. What a great idea to do these right now. As a lot of organizations are really looking for ways to provide an outlet for their employees that are working from home around mindfulness and just topics like this. So thank you. What a great time to be doing these. And it really is an honor to be part of your book and of everything that you're trying to do. So keep leading. You're doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you, Yvonne. We have another one on Monday, a webinar. We have Alba Criales, who is with the Corporate Empath. And she's going to talk about people that are introverts, and for them, this is the perfect scenario, working from home. So she's going to talk about that. We have Alba in Amador, who is going to be in on Tuesday, and she was one of the featured featured leaders from my book, Roar. Again, thank you, Yvonne. Thank you, Omama, and we'll see you on Monday.
Thank you.